Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how are my snipers doing today? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Listen, today we're talking about the one and only ICP. Now, I know a lot of people are starting to panic. People are starting to get worried because although technically we are kind of just in a range, let's just say an average of between $6, 620 to even downwards of 460. Every time we start going to the lower end, people do panic, right? People do panic despite not too much happening. Because obviously, if we take it from, let's just say, the relevant top to one of the bottoms, you see we're just below 50% of this whole entire range. And people are panicking. Now, I get it, right? I get it. The emotions in crypto, they come and go. When things pump, everyone's happy. They're like, "Oh yeah, we're back." When things dump, they get scared, they pray, they hope for the best. Right? I believe in prayer. I believe in all of that, but not in the markets. Listen, overall, we are still ranging, right? We are still ranging, and I expect for us to range and continue to range until pretty much we probably get some type of manipulation to the downside to trigger a move to the upside. Now, yes, that means I am still bullish. The thing is, ladies and gentlemen, right, even when we go back to pretty much last August, September, even October, right, when we go back, we can see that it was kind of the same picture that was happening. We were kind of going sideways for a couple of months. And although we were creating higher lows, we see one we had 680, then we had a 1716, and then boom, we had one at 817. We broke structure on the short term. People were scared. They're like, oh no, this thing is going to continue to dump, probably back down to $5. And then what happened? We got a double, pretty much double weekly candle close at 716. And then the next following week, we started to see huge momentum, right? Boom, one week we go up heavily. The next week we kind of just retest. And then the following weeks after that, we just kept pumping and pumping and pumping. So it was beautiful, right? It was beautiful. It was gorgeous. It was majestic. And it's exactly what we wanted. It's exactly what we wanted. Now, listen, I believe we are going to have a similar scenario, right? I believe we are currently in the stage of, short-term break of structure, manipulation, but I ultimately think we are going to close very, very well, just like the same way it closed back here, back in October time, where it kind of was a double bottom and then it shot up. So, I could see ICP even retesting off of 550, 555. Now, I still, I guess at this current rate, we are going to be wrong with the August breakout. I was really personally confident with it, but you know what? That is just a prediction at the end of the day. In terms of technical analysis, right? We didn't have the most amount of confirmation, but at the end of the day, people, I mean, that's the difference, right? One thing is a prediction, one thing is analysis. I can assure you ICP will continue to drop a little bit more. That's because I expect Bitcoin to drop a little bit more. Now, overall, Bitcoin is near very, very key levels, but based off what I've always seen with Bitcoin, I do think Bitcoin's going to most likely sweep, right? Sweep these lows, even if it just goes down an extra $1,000, right? Even if it just goes down a little bit more, I still think it is ultimately going to be sweeping these lows over here because we can see when we go to something like Bitcoin, we can see that when it created all-time highs, right? When it created new all-time highs, it just swept the new all-time highs by or the last all-time highs by just $1,000 before it really slammed down. So I would not be surprised if we get something similar where we just take out this bottom over here and then we start reversing, right? Take it out, boom, and then we start reversing to the upside, meaning something like ICP should be dropping. It should be dropping lower. And I would expect at least probably ICP to come around 475, even downwards of 450 before we see some type of pullback. Like I said, it's the same thing over here where we were just ranging sideways for some time. Boom. And then we can see manipulation grabs all the liquidity, reversal, and then we retest, and we continue to push higher. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I know, things are looking a little bit scary, but for me, this is just buying opportunities. I know some people, they're just mentally done. They're just mentally done. They don't care. They just want the pump to happen. But At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you want, right? It doesn't really matter what you want. We all want certain things in life, and sometimes that's just not the way the cookie crumbles. And with crypto, we are just the participators. We are not the people that control anything. Maybe if I got all my audience to put in money into a crypto that in a coin that has, pretty much like 2,000 market cap, yeah, we can move it. We can be the market makers there. But something like this, we need to just let the institutions, the manipulation just play out, right? It just needs to play out, which I know it can be very draining. I know this is why I don't try in general to do price predictions, not price predictions, but predictions of when things are going to explode, because I know what I need to see on the chart for it to explode, right? For it to cause an explosion. But when exactly in terms of timing, the month and the year, it's that's very, very hard to predict. A lot of people predicted that, oh, this year in March and April, we would have had a pump. And that's just because of last time, right? But you gotta remember this cycle is bigger. This cycle is gonna boom harder. So there's gonna be more money. When there's more money, it's a longer cycle. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will see how things unfold. In terms of Bitcoin dominance, it is still struggling. It is looking to be breaking to the downside, which is a very, very good positive for us, which obviously means if Bitcoin dominance starts really getting destroyed very quickly, that means our coins, altcoins will be getting pumped up. We're gonna go back to something like ICP. The lowest of lows, which should really hit this cycle, which would still be a dud, is going to be roughly $32, right? $32 to $35. Right? We have this huge resistance over here, plus we have a weekly institutional candle where we would probably sell off. Now, I do think we are going to come up to here, probably sell off a decent amount, probably back to $18 being the cheapest, before we then have another rally to the upside, hitting our $72 mark, right? That is ultimately our goal, is going to that institutional candle up here. And I still do believe, you know, based off everything, I believe we're still going to hit it, right? I know some people are calling for $200 ICP, $500, $1,000 ICP, but I'm not going to get too crazy. When the time comes, when the analysis comes, when the technical analysis is right in front of our face, we're gonna decide and be like, okay, is this the top? Is this pulling back, or what's happening? But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that is ultimately going to be it. Me, I'm super high on ICP. I just bought some the other day as well. Really do think this is a great moment to be dollar cost averaging. And yeah, that is going to be it, ladies and gentlemen. I love you guys so, so much. Let me know what you guys think of this project. Are you still high on it? What is your price target? How much ICP got? I mean, that's a private personal question. You don't have to answer it, but yeah, anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I love you guys so much, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Goodbye.